Donald Trump in the United States announced a new wave of sanctions on Russia, targeting their top oil producers and going after anyone who does business with them. And the European Union doubled down on this as they banned the imports of liquefied natural gas coming from Russia. The West has completely lost their damn mind. Donald Trump, despite what Democrats and libertarians claim, is one of the most pro-NATO presidents of my lifetime. Donald Trump is taking his war against Russia way further than Joe Biden did, and he's doing everything that NATO and the EU want. The energy costs in Europe will continue to skyrocket and quality of life will decrease. This is not only hurting Russia, but the entire world economy. Donald Trump claims he's doing this because Russia refuses to seek peace. But the reality of the situation is that Russia defeated the United States and NATO in Ukraine. Now they are flipping the table and threatening to destabilize the global economy in retaliation. But the consequences is directly harming their own citizens. We already seen a dramatic increase of energy costs and the quality of life in Europe ever since this conflict began. The ruling elite expects us to make sacrifices in our personal life in order to support their war of conquest. The working class needs to advocate for peace and reject their proxy war. Sanders praises Donald Trump immigration policies while throwing his good friend Joe Biden and the Democratic Party under the bus.
If you don't have any borders, then you don't have a nation, right? In a sense. So has historically the United States done well under Democrats and Republicans in protecting the border? The answer is no. Trump did a better job. I don't like Trump, but we should have a secure border, and it ain't that hard to do. Biden didn't do it. Those before him did not do it. We should have a secure border, period.
Bernie Sanders claims that Joe Biden didn't do enough, but he funded ICE to historic levels and deported more people than Donald Trump. The reality of the situation is there is no open border. This is just a result of failed neoliberal policies. The United States sanctions and starves 1/3 of the world's population. Then they complain when those same people seek asylum. What I do agree with Bernie Sanders on is that Democratic Party immigration policy is horrible and way more cruel than what Republicans actually do. Border crossings are down because at least Donald Trump and Republicans are honest about their intentions. Democrats virtue signal to the Latino community and pretend to be pro-immigration. Then once the migrants come, they deport their ass while locking their children in cages. This dynamic is exactly why Barack Obama was the deporter-in-chief, why Joe Biden deported more people than Donald Trump. I have no idea why so many progressives are shocked by Bernie Sanders' position. Have they been paying attention to anything that Democrats have done over the last few decades?
What's poppin'? My friends, my family, welcome back. Welcome back to Nick at Primetime. Sorry I didn't have a show this Friday. I was attending my sister's birthday party, so that was a high priority event, but it's good to be back. We have a lot of bangers upcoming for you guys. We have our friend Carl Zah, who joined us here soon. He's going to help me break down how Trump is getting absolutely outclassed by Xi Jinping in China, exactly like I predicted. And we also have another banger on Wednesday. My good friend, Dr. Jill Stein, she will be back. She will be joining me on Nick on Primetime on Wednesday. So make sure you guys check me out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I have to start here because I remember so many Democrats, so many progressives was kind of in shambles when they saw that video from Bernie Sanders, because you guys know, if you're a partisan, if you're a Democrat, and if you're a liberal, you have a memory of a goldfish. Like, these people are just now immigration activists. They forgot what Democrats have done. Where, like, Joe Biden and Barack Obama deported more people, and I explained in my hotspot video, because Democrat immigration policy is more cruel in practice. They're fake. virtue signaling they do towards Latinos to win their votes during election season, so they pretend to be pro-immigrant, and then the second they get here, they lock their ass up in cages. So that's why, like, the Democrats are generally the most effective evil, because border crossings are down, like what Bernie says. That's a fact. Because Trump and Republicans, at least they're honest. They say, man, if you come over here, I know we're responsible for this because we sanctioned and starved and destabilized your regions. But if you come over here, we're gonna fuck you up. That's the, you know, I don't agree with that. I explained many times before. I'm more of a freedom of movement guy. But that's the Republican position now. Border crossings are down. This dynamic is why Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Democrats tend to deport more. And it's very annoying to me that Democrats and progressives are only immigration activists when a Republican is in charge. You have to understand that we're fighting one giant empire with one shared vision in mind, and that is to make profit based on the prison industrial complex. That's why they sanction countries to death, destabilize other regions, allow an immigration crisis to happen so they can sell prison beds. You have DHS that has record funding, and you had the border industrial complex and all the companies who make those like robot dogs, all the weaponry that I covered this during the Biden administration, how they explained how the border industrial complex was booming under Joe Biden. Wonder if I can find an article quickly. Here's one article that this is not exactly the one I quoted, but look, Joe Biden is delivering big for the border industrial complex. So I'm assuming that Todd Miller's referring to what I'm referring to, because if you follow RBN, I covered this. I covered how they had this giant expo. It was like Comic-Con for ICE, because Joe Biden just passed his record budget that Donald Trump surpassed, but he passed his record budget, and it was amazing for DHS. So you guys understand what the Democratic Party do, and people think this is better. They lie to immigrants. They tell immigrants, like, oh, guys, we believe in asylum. And then when they get here, the Democratic Party sell them out to the prison industrial complex. I am not a lesser of two evils guy. You guys know that. I'm a post-duopolist. But how is this preferable? I want to read these stats out because Carl will be joining us here soon. I want to cover as much as I can during my opening monologue here. Let's see if I know I covered this a lot. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. This shows how much I covered this. We understand that the empire always doubles down and they always crank it up a notch. Barack Obama was the deporter in chief. Donald Trump tried to surpass him and failed. So now Donald Trump, after failing to do to actually hit the numbers that Democrats hit, they're trying to compensate with that by expanding ICE budgets. But they just don't have the callousness. They don't have the calculating evil that the Democratic Party has. As they tell Latino families that are a party of immigrants, this was under Biden. The Biden administration put out its 2023 budget, which proposed a $97.3 billion for DHS, the agency's largest in 2 decades. So Donald Trump is without a doubt greatly expanding ICE. But this was started and enabled under Democrats. The DHS and ICE, just like corporations, they have never-ending expansion. Every fiscal year they have to have more. Which is why when we talk about abolish ICE, defund the police, we are taking the fiscally conservative position. It's the libertarians like Dave Smith, these people who claim they're a small government. No, you're not. You are supportive of giant spending for DHS, border security, the NYPD. How can you say you're a fiscal conservative when you support $10 billion? on the NYPD, and you guys still don't feel safe. These conservatives in New York be like, I don't feel safe in New York. Nick, we're spending $10 billion there on policing. How are you still not feeling safe? At what point do you realize that this is a failure of neoliberal policies? And as we're seeing the military-industrial complex expand to $1 trillion budget under Donald Trump, as we see ICE and DHS being funded to record levels, we have capitalist breadlines that are returning to the United States. Once again, capitalism never worked whenever it's been tried, my friends. SNAP funding expiration set to hit 40 million people. Jesus Christ. And we need to absolutely stand with our brothers and sisters who are victims of this capitalist regime. But do people ever take a second to think why the richest empire in modern human history, probably ever, has millions of people that are hungry, that can't even provide food for themselves without a welfare state? We have a working poor. We have a working hungry class. What kind of barbaric state devalues work to the point where you can be a working class person and you still have food insecurity, where you still are hungry? This is the failure of capitalism. The richest country, 40 million people that rely on SNAP funding, that now is gone. Donald Trump has to send more money to Israel, guys. Sorry. He's sending billions of dollars to Argentina to bail out Javier Milei. That's the priority of this capitalist ruling class, is to preserve their ideological projects, which is why they sanction and they economically retaliate against countries who have different central planning models like Cuba. But despite the Cuban embargo and the Cuban sanctions and the hostilities, Cubans, they still have a higher life expectancy rate than we do. They have a higher literacy rate than we do. How are Americans acceptable, or how can they accept this level of mediocrity out of the most powerful country in the world? And whenever capitalists on Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, whenever they talk about economics, they always sound ridiculous to me because they bring up metrics that doesn't fucking matter. They're like, oh my God, we have amazing GDP growth. Fuck your GDP growth. We have millions of people homeless. We have people who cannot afford to own a house. We have breadlines that are back because the failure of your governance. Meanwhile, China has a zero hunger plan that has been modeled by humanitarian organizations all over the world. You guys know they cut hunger in half by 2015. Still making amazing progress to this day. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. And you want to know what the United States reaction to capitalist breadlines returning? Donald Trump's reaction is not to solve the problem. We're just not going to track it anymore. USDA canceled survey tracking how many Americans struggle to get enough food. So if what the capitalists do when they realize they can't solve a problem, they just decide not to track it anymore. So while people talk about stock growth, the stock market, GDP growth, they essentially, in order to talk about our economy, they bring up how good millionaires are doing. Even though Americans have no faith, no optimism in the future, you have millions hungry. 1 out of 5 children. Look at this. That's crazy. 1 in 5 children, over 13 million kids don't have enough food to grow up strong. Imagine defending such a failed system. Like the people like Dave Smith, I literally called this man out multiple times. I called him out again a few days ago. Because I'm like, do you want to debate anyone else other than a shit lib? Because imagine defending this system that creates such massive amount of poverty despite the trillions of dollars that we stole from other countries. Despite the trillion of dollars that we stole from the global south, they still left your ass poor. You're not a capitalist. You're an exploited worker, my friend. Look at this. 50 million turned to food banks, pantries for help. See, what we want a central planning model. We want a system where your work can make it so not only can you feed yourself, but feed your family. We want your family to thrive. We want your work to be valued. The whole point of the capitalist system is to devalue your work and to believe that you have to have two jobs just to feed you and your family. So there's so many of these damning statistics on our system. And you want to know who voted against making food a human right? They said, Nick, your politics are just anti-American. Well, if you're one of two countries, including your colony, the United States and Israel are the only countries who voted against making food a human right. And I feel like if your politics is anti the country that voted against food as a human right, I think that's very valid. One thing is not built like the other. And this is what many social democrats and many liberals don't understand. They're like, well, don't you know that China and Russia, just because we corrupt don't mean other countries not corrupt. Fam, you have no idea. We are dealing with a different level of evil with our ruling class. And many Americans can't reconcile with that. The liberal thought is like, well, our government is corrupt. Other people's government are corrupt too. Hey, just all governments are corrupt. That's like more the libertarian, Trotskyist style of thinking. All governments are corrupt. Yeah, we got to oppose China too. We got to oppose Xi Jinping too. Because don't you know he's an oppressive ruling class? Even though 80% of Chinese people support their government. Chinese people are optimistic about the future. 90% of millennials own their home. China support food as a human right. But Trotskyists and social democrats like, we gotta condemn China. Don't you know they got an oppressive ruling class just like us? No, they don't. That's pure American code. We have the ruling class that supports bombing hospitals, bombing children. We have the ruling class that supports starvation as a tool of war. I gotta switch off the main RBN stream. I'm about to switch to my. If you're on the RBN stream, I'm about to switch you over to my main YouTube channel. This is a meme from my good friend. This is a great account, Mass Strike Now. Children shouldn't starve. Who the fuck said that? All right, on that, I'm gonna end the RBN stream on YouTube. Make sure you guys check us out on other platforms. You guys know the drill. All right, let's continue here. Just to show you how depraved our system is, our society is, and I want to drill it through the people's head who believe that all these countries are created equal. Like, you don't understand the systems of imperialism. You don't understand how imperialism is tied to who control the financial markets and how the United States dominate financial markets. And that's a key part of imperialism. Like, there's so many people who don't even understand that central argument. That's what a lot of the Trotskyite people are missing. That's what the social democrats are missing. Like, oh, we got to condemn. No, there's a system of imperialism, a system of capitalism that every other socialist country have to plan their system around that just to survive. The people who are victims of the system of imperialism are countries like Cuba and Venezuela and North Korea and DPRK who are sanctioned to death. Meanwhile, you have the Zohran Mamdani letter like, don't you know that Cuba is a tyrannical country? Sir, your government that you're about to work for is waging economic war against Cuba. How dare you? But the reason why they do that because they don't have an actual critique of imperialism coming from the lens of class war. If he did, he wouldn't be going around saying that Nicolas Maduro is a tyrant as a social democrat in the United States like Zohran Mamdani and Bernie Sanders do. I'm very excited that you guys think you're going to have lower prices in New York, but it's just another example of how social democrats enable imperialism. How Zohran Mamdani condemning the Palestinian resistance, condemning the language, condemning the organization structure actually has done more harm than good. How he legitimized the anti-Semitism crackdown. That he's now gonna he got a Zionist who's gonna lead the NYPD. I told you so. So I've literally listened to my Palestinian friends. It's not me. I'm literally listening to Nerdim, our good friend. Many of our Palestinian friends like. He has done damage to our movement. The Zionist talking points that he legitimized, and then they come from the right, repeating the same empire talking points, and it undercuts the Palestinian activists. Because once someone with credibility and big clout like Zohran Mamdani condemns globalized Intifada, it makes everyone else seem crazy. It shifts the Overton window to the right. Which is the goal of these people, but congratulations, you guys won your popularity contest, I guess. You guys had this moment of celebration, I guess, but it's so obvious why the empire allowed them to win, why King Jeffries is now endorsing them. That's why. So these people are why they spend their time condemning the states that the empire wants them to. Like the Mamdani family, they're part of the free Syria regime change. Like, have they said anything about the head choppers in Syria? That's what Zohran's wife, she was a free Syrian activist. Like, is there any comments about how it's going in Syria? How Israel completely destroyed their sovereignty, stole a part of Syrian land, and how the United States and Israel is stealing Syrian resources, including their water? Are the Mamdanis ever going to comment on that? That's what his wife supported. All the free Syria people have nothing to say about Syria anymore. Have you guys noticed that? All right, let me get back on target because I went on that rant because I'm frustrated with the United States left who go on and repeat CIA talking points against what they call and what the capitalist class call tyrannical regimes. But what's more tyrannical than this? I would dare any social democrat. Now, you guys saw how Ro Khanna didn't do well. You guys saw how Marianne Williamson didn't do well. Can you imagine? Give me 5 minutes with Zohran Mamdani, and I'm going to destroy him. I will ask him and all the other social democrats to simply define authoritarianism. Why does Zohran, Bernie Sanders, why do they condemn Cuba? Why do they condemn Russia? But they have nothing to say about the UK where free speech is non-existent. The UK is arresting doctors and putting them on trial in the UK, arresting journalists for criticizing the state of Israel. Has Zohran Mamdani, has Marianne Williamson, has any of these people condemned the UK as a fascist state? They have not. In fact, AOC, the big brain, she said, I want socialism like the UK. Look it up. Look it up. That's the dumb left, fam. They got full-fledged fascism in the France, the UK, and Germany. But social democrats love these states. Don't you know they got healthcare, guys? Yeah, they do a little fascism, but they got healthcare. Yes, Sweden voted to enable genocide in Yemen, but don't you know they got a social safety net? That's how empire puppets think. Only 11% of 18 to 9. Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't read this headline. My bad. I keep going on tangents. But my point, like, this is what a real authoritarian state looks like. Where not only does the United States don't believe you have the right to food, they don't believe you have the right to feed people who are hungry. We have a state that is arresting 90-year-olds who are feeding homeless people. These are kind of things that capitalists can't even explain. We can't solve the food insecurity crisis. That will harm big food. This is sick. I think we may reschedule Carl Zah, but you guys know I'm just getting warmed up. I can fit. Yeah, I'm ranting tonight. So I think we may have to reschedule Carl Zah, but hey, man, I'm just getting started. So as the United States decides they're not going to track the hunger crisis anymore because they have no solutions for it, China has made this a core central tenet of their government. A big part of their central planning model is lifting people out of poverty and feeding their people. And it had massive success. Look at China, a model for zero hunger. July 2025. It's an old story in the sense that China has been doing it for the last 10 years. Compared it to our country, this is China who actually values their working class. Where I think this was yesterday, they was celebrating their sanitation workers. This is what they do in China while they tell you you're working. Actually, I could not play that music. I can't play that music at all. I think we probably get in trouble for it. But this is how you guys see how they have completely different values. Where the working class, this is why they can't stand the democracy in Cuba. They can't stand the democracy in Venezuela. Because in Venezuelan democracy, you have ordinary people, you have teachers, you have construction workers, you have librarians, you have farmers who are able to run and gain power in the political system. That's the system they view as authoritarian. Meanwhile, our capitalist class is owned by Jeffrey Epstein, the Mossad. I saw this I thought this funny as hell. Donald Trump dancing with. This is kind of wild because like this man has butchered so many Palestinians and so many Muslims. Look at this. And I feel their pain here because Trump is on his Asian tour to counter the rise of China. He's supposed to be meeting in Japan to meet with the new prime minister, Sanae Takaichi, the far right girl boss, the first ever female prime minister, who's essentially the new empire puppet. Someone who praised Margaret Thatcher, who said she looks up to Margaret Thatcher. So he's in Asia trying to negotiate with Asian countries to separate and isolate themselves from China. And this story, and this is one of our main stories of the day, is the trade war that Donald Trump started with Xi Jinping. And it's hilarious because if you look at the framework, they announced a framework for a deal. It's essentially Donald Trump and MAGA celebrating the return of the status quo. So Donald Trump and MAGA started a trade war with China and got their ass whooped So bad that China was like, all right, bro, we're not gonna buy any soybeans. We're gonna go to Brazil. Hey, Brazil, what's up? They were like, what's good? You got some soybeans we can buy? And now the Trump economy, and this is close to home to me because Missouri economy is going to get hit hard by this. But Missouri farmers face crisis as China halts soybean purchases. So when the trade war started, and I covered this in the beginning, what did I tell you guys? I told you guys China's response was like, bro, don't do this. If you do this, we're going to show you who's really in charge. We're going to show you who really had the leverage here because we can expand our markets. We have higher purchasing power, parity than you guys do. We actually have a manufacturing base. You guys do not want to engage in a trade war. And Fox News hyped themselves up like, oh my God, Donald Trump is going to take on China. Fam, they are being humbled. And now they hit this framework deal where essentially everything that Donald Trump got was things that was already part of the status quo. Look, further cooperation to the stem a flow of fentanyl into the United States. So now that's what you guys consider a victory? This is what China was doing before. If you guys listen to Xi Jinping and the Chinese government, they were very open about they have a zero drug tolerance policy in China. They're more than happy to work with the United States to block the flow of fentanyl. Then the right wing, in order to get people to turn against China, in order to promote their anti-China propaganda, they say, oh, well, we can't work with China. They refuse to work with us on fentanyl. This has always been on the table. So you guys realize that bullet point one is already just the Trump administration returning to the status quo and just pure code. China to buy substantial amounts of U.S. soybeans. Fam, China was responsible for over half of the soybean market in the United States. It was a giant part of the Missouri economy, where our largest crop that we export is soybeans. And China dominated that market. Trump hurt farmers in his first term, waging a half-hearted attempt of a trade war against China, where many Missouri farmers went bankrupt, where they had to do a bailout for Missouri farmers. So essentially, Trump launched his tariff war against China. And what's the first thing that China said? China's like, all right, man, if you don't stop, we will stop buying soybeans and we will fuck up your entire agricultural economy. And the Mac was like, oh, you're not going to do shit. You're not going to do shit, bro. You ain't going to do shit. And then they stopped buying soybeans and they went hard, zero purchase of United States soybeans. They went to Brazil. They went to other markets, and they immediately crashed the economy. Farmers are going bankrupt. Look, Missouri farmers face crisis as China halts soybean purchases. So the corporate media is doing a horrible job explaining this, but do you guys understand what just happened here? China was already buying soybeans. Donald Trump started a trade war, and they said, go fuck yourself. We can easily crash the soybean market. Now, Donald Trump came back and negotiated, and essentially what they gave him was, hey, man, all right, I guess we start buying your soybeans again. I hope you learned your lesson, champ. How did that trade war against us go, champ? And when China was asked about Donald Trump's tariffs, and what they will give up in order to join the negotiation table with Donald Trump, China said, man, we're not going to do shit, man. I promise you. We are not going to give Donald Trump anything. We will wait here until you guys grow up, until you guys realize that your plan, your campaign promises, I know you promised the rednecks that you're going to challenge China, but once you grow up and get back to reality, we will be back to do business with you. And that's exactly what happened. So as MAGA and their Fox News media is in full-blown cope mode and lying to the American people about what's happening, Fox News like, this has been an amazing victory for Donald Trump. Like, he just got the status quo back. Look at the third bullet point. To prove my point even more, China could delay export controls on rare earth minerals. So back to the status quo. So what was another weapon that China had in the back pocket? China said, hey, man, we're going to apply export controls on rare earth minerals that you guys desperately need for your tech industry. And all the tech bros, all the capitalists, they're like, you ain't going to do shit. It's not going to matter. And then China put export controls on the rare earth minerals. And they were like, oh, shit, we're fucked. So then Trump went back to G like, oh, sorry, daddy. I know I'm an idiot. I know I started a trade war that I had no chance of winning. They're going to hurt my economy, hurt my farmers, hurt our tech industry. Hurt all the industries that need rare earth minerals, like the auto industry is a big one. They're being hurt bad because of the trade war that Donald Trump started. And this is what I told you guys, what, Zoya, 8 months ago? I told you guys exactly how this was going to go. And I saw a few, like, you guys know I have some MAGA people who follow me. They was upset. They were like, Nick, you just love China. You just a China nut. Remember Zoya? You guys remember that? They was like, you just say China will always... Here's a perfect example of what we're talking about. And now, in order for a desperate Hail Mary, something to show to the American people, they say, oh, we got to finalize a deal over TikTok ownership. Pure code. You telling me that you started a trade war that destroyed the lives of farmers, that hurt the auto industry, and tank financial markets over TikTok? Do you guys really believe that? That is not what happened. That is not what happened at all. They just desperate to show people, oh, we got to win. We got to win somewhere. No, guys, we didn't get our ass handed to us. That's exactly what fucking happened. They got their ass handed to us, and they're like, hey, guys, at least we got them floating the idea. They didn't even fully agree to it. They're like, they're floating the idea of approving the TikTok deal. Now, that's what you got. That's your big victory that you've been fighting for. Man, I need I almost want to show you guys one of the Fox News segments where it was trying to convince the people who won this. I don't have a ton of time though. I need to find that because they had one with Gordon Chang where he was like, Trump got China exactly where you want. I'm like, oh my god, bro, the pure code. But I'll move on. I guess I'll move on for now. Here's another failure of Donald Trump's policy against China. Was he wanted to separate and isolate China on the world stage. But by applying tariffs on India, it showed that he had no idea what he was doing. And remember, this is what Fareed Zakaria on CNN, this is what he was talking about. He was like, hey, man, what you're going to do is you're going to push India toward China. And that's exactly what happened. Not only does he have India more willing to do business with China, these idiots put tariffs on the EU, and now even EU countries like Sweden and France, even Emmanuel Macron, he was like, you gotta know I'm down for some neocon shit too, man. I'm all down for some anti-China shit, but the United States kind of lost their damn mind. And now we kind of want to do more business with China. They realized that they committed economic suicide. In countries like Germany and the UK, they're still too stupid to get it. Keir Starmer, he put out some weak statements where he said we got to reconsider our trade relationship with China. But for the most part, they're still going along with the West, trying to cut down on the dependence from China. But people like France, like, we're done. And you have Canada, and you guys think the Canadians been pissed at Donald Trump over the tariffs in Canada. They had an ad they played with Ronald Reagan condemning tariffs, and now Donald Trump lashed out and put more tariffs on Canada after that. So now Canada's like, bro, I swear to God, y'all see how every single move that they made benefit China? Every single step that they made, everything that Scott Bessent said was going to happen did not happen. Because now Canada is like, all right, bro, you know we down for some imperialist shit too. But I swear to God, if you guys keep fucking with us, we're going to go look at China as well. Now, this headline blew my mind, fam. I don't know if I'm late on this, but this headline blew my mind. Canada set to side with China on EVs. Oh, Jesus Christ. So you had Western governments, because they failed to compete in a true free market against China EVs, who destroys American EVs. I sold cars, fam. I sold Lexuses, electric vehicles. I sold Camry hybrids. I sold Prius. I sold a ton of electric cars in my 4-year career as a car salesman before I did this. Bro, our electric vehicles don't have shit on. I cannot emphasize this enough. I cannot. I cannot emphasize this enough. There will be no car sale. There would be no industry in the United States if we allow Chinese EVs in. They are completely superior than our cars. Not only are they superior in our cars in every way, they are cheaper, my friends. So Canada, by allowing EVs and dropping the embargo on them, Canada is going to have access to high quality electric vehicles for around $10,000. The American auto industry is about to get destroyed if what I'm reading here is true. And this is our friend S.L. Catton, who is tweeting this out as well. And this is why I found this. Big shout out to our friend Catton. We had him on a few times. He says Canadians will soon be driving cool electric cars that cost only $10,000. Oh, Jesus Christ. Bro, the American market auto industry will be cooked in Canada. And I don't know the numbers on top of my head, but Canada purchases of the American auto industry is a gigantic part of what the auto industry makes. Like Canada is a big part of the auto industry, so this will be a big hit. So let me continue the tweet. Meanwhile, Americans will still be burdened with 1.6 trillion in auto loans. That's another metric that the corporate media never talk about. Is how many Americans, you guys know there's a record amount of Americans who are upside down in their cars. There's a massive amount of Americans that went in debt. There's a massive amount of Americans a record amount that has auto debt right now. The same way there's a record amount of Americans that are in credit card debt. And here's the article I found on that. There's a record amount of Americans that are behind on their car payments. But meanwhile, the capitalist class, they want to keep talking about GDP growth. Those metrics do not reflect how the working class is doing. The working class of China is not only doing much better than ours, but because they don't have this massive amount of debt in their society. We have a country full of debt slaves, wage debt slaves. And what we want to do as communists is we want to lift the debt off of the American working class. We want to cancel the debt that the fraudulent mismanagers of our society plunge on an entire generation of Americans. We want to free the American people. We want them to have pride in their work. We want to put Americans to work, have a jobs guarantee. We want them to have purchasing power, have pride, and have a family where they only have one breadwinner. Instead of putting families in debt where both the husband and the wife have to work, let's value work so much that you can have one breadwinner in the house. We can have paid family maternity leave. We have a true pro-family policy. And we have a third party that can outline this shit. We would dominate. And I strongly agree with that. And that's what my friend Eddie Liger was talking about. That our friend Haas was talking about. That what communists, that what we said. Our platform is freeing the American class from usury debt that come from the Zio-fascist capitalist class. All right, let's get to our next topic. We don't want to talk about Venezuela. We have Linsey Graham, our favorite homosexual senator. This man goes to church every single Sunday, prays to his God. And after he prays to his God, he then goes on corporate media and advocate bombing other people and killing them. You gotta see how Christian Zionism is completely barbaric. It's a barbaric ideology. These people don't value human life. So here's Linsey Graham, and they're going over. You have both parties. That's intense propaganda mode right now. You have X, you have Instagram, you have TikTok, you have all these social media companies that are changing the algorithm to promote regime change activists in Venezuela. You have military buildup. And the only criticism that comes from the Democratic Party is, hey, man, we just need congressional approval. Like, people like Cory Booker, like, hey, man, let me vote for war. I want to vote for it. Give me an opportunity to vote for war. CNN, MSNBC, all the corporate media, instead of explaining to the American people that there is no drugs in Venezuela, and they're only telling you that in order to enable regime change, which is illegal by international law. And people are, instead of explaining that to people, they go along with the narrative. Oh, it's a question. Is he a narco-terrorist? Hey, Linsey Graham claims that he's a narco-terrorist. Is he? Oh, no, I'm not going to say. I've been watching these people, man. Their neutrality is propaganda. When you cover this, when you see these criminals planning aggression against the state and creating a war on false pretext, your job as a journalist, as a fourth estate, as you claim you are, is to call this lie out aggressively. But if you watch, hell, one half of the media just outright goes along with the lie. But like, this is the Fox News, One American Network, New York Post. They will go along with the lie, like, oh yeah, Maduro's a narco-terrorist. Yeah, he's the leader of multiple narco-terrorist gangs that want to drug the American people for some fucking reason. Wait a minute, let's play a clip of Linsey Graham and we get more into that.
The examples you're citing also involve ground troops. You said time for Maduro to go.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot like regime change. Are you talking about troops on the ground?
I'll let the president speak to that. I'm talking about a briefing that would expand military operations potentially from the sea to the land. It is time for Maduro to go. It was time for Ortega to go. The Monroe Doctrine has been robustly applied by President Trump. So these military assets are moving forward to deal with a country that's got blood on its hands when it comes to Americans by flooding our country with drugs from Venezuela and Colombia. So I hope Maduro would leave peacefully, but I don't think he's going to stay around much longer. I think President Trump is tired of Venezuela being used as a staging platform to poison.
You guys realize that there's no bigger terrorist in the world than this guy. He quotes the Monroe Doctrine. You guys hear that? He mentions the Monroe Doctrine as the legal justification for why we should bomb and invade Venezuela, because he knows he didn't leave it off the table. The Monroe Doctrine is fascist imperialist policy put on paper where they say any country in our region, we have the right to interfere in that country in order to defeat communism. It's an anti-communist pledge. It's the reason why I have no tolerance for anti-communism, because anti-communism is responsible for the deaths of millions of people. And they put this anti-communist policy on paper called the Monroe Doctrine, where any working class in their hemisphere, and honestly, if you want to be real, it's way beyond just the hemisphere. But on paper, any working class who has an uprising against their capitalist class and institute a system that the United States does not approve of, they have the right, and they are God ordained to kill them to overthrow their country. I know it was a while ago, but do you guys remember I had a debate with Destiny, the pedophile? This was way before that came out, where he was trying to debate fascism with me, and he was trying to explain how Russia is a fascist country, and I brought up the Monroe Doctrine, and that was one of the moments in the debate where I had a good checkmate against him, explaining how the fascist Monroe Doctrine is still applied today. So here's Linsey Graham openly admitting that the Monroe Doctrine is a giant part of why they make decisions in Venezuela to this day. And this is another example of Americans who, when I guess it's like focus group polled, they tested what talking points would work on Americans the most to get them to support bombing Venezuela. Despite the fact that 62% of Americans oppose it, only around 20% do. But it's obvious that their focus groups told them that you have to bring up fentanyl, narco-terrorism, and that we got to scare these suburbanites into supporting bombing Nicolas Maduro. And here's Donald Trump. This is the clip that was famous. It's essentially laying out his intentions that he wants people dead in Venezuela.
And Mr. President, if you are declaring war against these cartels and Congress is likely to approve of that process, why not just ask for a declaration of war?
Well, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay? We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay.
And this is a giant admission. This is a big moment in geopolitics where the president of the United States has admit we're going to extrajudicially kill our enemies. But it is not new. This is why the establishment can't stand Donald Trump, because for good reason. I'm not upset at anyone who saw this clip and they was outraged. You should be outraged. If the Democratic Party didn't take advantage of this clip, it would have been political malpractice. Let's be real. But you guys know I gotta keep everything in perspective. This is not new United States foreign policy. This has been standard United States foreign policy for at least my entire lifetime. Barack Obama launched drone strikes that had a 90% civilian death rate and judicial killings. The difference between Barack Obama and Donald Trump is Donald Trump in public will say stuff like, yeah, we're going to kill them. We're going to kill them dead. He will say the quiet part out loud. It's Barack Obama who says stuff behind the scenes. Remember when Barack Obama said, I'm actually very good at murdering people? That quote that came from behind the scene. The difference between the Republican Party and Democratic Party is that the Democratic Party will claim they're fighting for human rights. Republicans say, no, we want the fucking oil. I have to bring things into context, but that does not let Trump off the hook. We've got to be intellectually honest about what the empire we're fighting that doesn't really change between the presidents. But in a sane society, Donald Trump should be tried and imprisoned for murder without approval of Congress, violation of international law. You guys are the terrorists you claim Venezuela is. You guys are the terrorists that you guys claim Russia is. As they claim they they believe in law and order in order to justify a police state against the American people, they act lawlessly and they act like gangsters on the international stage because they know the law doesn't apply to them. The people who claim that we must have law and order in order to justify authoritarianism in the streets, these are the same people who let Epstein pedophiles free, for example. Remember that Netanyahu aide who was caught in a pedophile sting, and Donald Trump and his administration let him off free? And then these white people say, oh, we believe in law and order. That's why we had to occupy your neighborhood. I support abolishing the police because I believe that we should have the exact opposite. We should have intense authoritarianism against the ruling class. No occupation of our streets. We own the streets. We didn't take care of each other. Intense authoritarianism, suppression of the capitalist class. because they do the same thing to us. They have a relaxed, laissez-faire approach to law enforcement when it comes to their pedophile friends, when it comes to their white-collar friends like Donald Trump. He pardoned the Binance scammer. He pardoned a ton of white-collar criminals because they believe in laissez-faire interpretation of the law for themselves, but harsh authoritarianism, harsh interpretation of the law, fascism against the working class. So the difference between the capitalists and the communists, like myself, is we believe in the exact inverse. The exact inverse. We want the billionaire class, like in China, to be terrified of us in the government. Meanwhile, we want the people to understand that the government is with them, which is why the Chinese working class, they trust their government. That's why the Russian working class, they trust their government. That's why Venezuela stands behind Maduro. This is why Cuba stands behind their government. Because they know they have oppression of the capitalist class. With that said, they have, since we are full-fledged overdrive, one of the biggest mistakes, and I said this when I covered this at the time, one of the biggest mistakes was giving the Nobel Peace Prize to Maria Corina Machado. When I heard that she won the Nobel Peace Prize, my jaw hit the floor, fam. You guys saw my reaction. That was a lit stream. We had a lot of fun because I've been following this chick, this batshit crazy motherfucker, for years. Like, I did a segment on her 4 months ago. I don't know if you guys remember. There was a segment where she was on Fox News. We did a segment 4 months ago featuring her, and then she won the Nobel Peace Prize. It was crazy. I saw it. I gotta find the episode. But we just covered her, and then now she, like, the best thing they could have done is keep these people in the fucking shadows, man. Like, the reason why this was such a mistake is because the more publicity that Maria Corina Machado and the fascist Venezuelan pro-CIA, pro-Nazi, pro-Zionist opposition, the more you spotlight them, the more sympathetic people inherently become of Nicolas Maduro. And once you realize how batshit crazy Maria Machado is, you realize Nicolas Maduro is a fucking saint. They have to make up this narrative that Maria Machado is in hiding. She lives in Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro at any time could fuck her up. But he doesn't because he is a statesman. The way he managed United States aggression against his country over the last decade has been incredible. This is why his people support him. I have made this argument many times before on this show. So he allowed his opposition to run free and be little tyrants because he knows that he's winning the battle in terms of diplomacy, legitimacy. Now, as the United States increased their aggression against their state, there are Latin American countries who was never even that friendly with Venezuela. Gustavo Petro was a Maduro skeptic. Even now, he's on board now. And Venezuela has played this game in a way where they have won over the global consensus. Now, I know the Western societies and Western countries are against Venezuela, but there has been UN resolution after UN resolution where they've been demanding United States sanctions on Venezuela be lifted. You had China, you had Russia, you had to, once again, ignore the global minority known as the NATO alliance. The NATO alliance hate Maduro, but Africa, like Russia, China, Iran, they see what happened to Venezuela. They know what the West is doing. So the only thing they did was expose and play their hand. They completely ruined any credibility they had left on the eyes of the global stage by giving the world the Nobel Peace Prize to this crackpot who is actively calling for United States and
be a massive disruption. Yes, I just wonder if the critics will be right that it will be a massive disruption. When you mentioned earlier to me during the commercial break that people are not clear on what a transition would look like.
That's a very important issue because the regime is trying to create this narrative and concern of a problematic transition and comparing to countries like Libya and Iraq. That's totally false. I mean, there's no other most cohesive.
Here she is advocating for the United States to invade her country and wage war against her country. And then she says, yeah, I know there's some people who are worried about another situation like we've seen in Libya and Iraq. Yeah, I know I'm advocating for the complete destabilization of our country and the regime change, installing a leadership which is massively unpopular among the Venezuelan people, which would only enable more conflict. Yes, we know that's the case, but who cares? I want power. I don't want to completely destabilize my country. I know you guys worried about becoming another Libya, but who gives a shit? I want to privatize the Venezuelan economy, and I want power, even if it means betraying my own people. So, do you guys understand how crazy it is what she said? It's okay if they turn us to Libya or Iraq. Don't worry about that. We just need to get rid of Maduro now because I can't beat him in a free and fair election.
This narrative and concern of a problematic transition and comparing to countries like Libya and Iraq.
She says, she's like, oh, the opposition, they just fear mongering. They said, oh, what are we going to do? Become Libya and Iraq? Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. But she doesn't care because this is a copy and paste of the Free Syria movement. The way that the Free Syria movement was successful, they're trying to implement that same policy, and they've been trying to implement the same policy in Venezuela for the last 15 years. And Nicolas Maduro has done a great job managing this, keeping the empire off his back, while still maintaining popular support in his country. And here she is, she's going to lie. We have Venezuela Analysis who explained that people know who she is, but the same way that Juan Guaido couldn't go out in public without being assaulted, Venezuelans spit in her face. She's considered a Trumpian figure. She's considered a complete joke in Venezuela, but look at the lies they tell the American people. They are relying on the dumb, poor white people to support this war because they hear trigger words. Oh, he's a narco-terrorist. Communism. We're gonna lie and say that he's a dictator and tyrant if they rely on anti-intellectualism.
That's a very important issue because the regime is trying to create this narrative and concern of a problematic transition and comparing to countries like Libya and Iraq. That's totally false. I mean, there's no other most cohesive society as Venezuela. And it is the people, 90% of the population that wants to live in peace, but peace requires freedom, and freedom requires strength. So we will see an orderly transition. Be sure of that.
No one believes that. And you notice how they have to lie. They have to say that 90% of our country support this regime change. Complete nonsense. Maduro is literally arming grandmothers in the street. The Venezuelan people, and this has been explained by our friend in Venezuela Analysis, and this has been a popular explanation of what's going on. Our friend Chris from DDG was in Venezuela. Even more centrist, liberal-minded Venezuelans are much more supportive of Nicolas Maduro because of Western aggression. I'm not claiming he's a perfect leader. I'm sure that they have some criticisms of him. But this is why United States sanctions fail. Because the result of United States sanctions is to rally the people behind the leadership that the West is obviously trying to depose. And the people want their sovereignty. And the people who want to go along with this is around 43% of the Venezuelan people. But Maduro still has popular support. The fact that Nicolas Maduro even allows a traitorous opposition. By the way, Edmundo Gonzalez fled to Miami. These people are so crazy. They side with the CIA and a hostile foreign power, and Nicolas Maduro still allows them to compete. Do you guys understand that Nicolas Maduro is a goddamn saint? What would happen to us if we was openly coordinating with Russia, if we was openly coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party, running as representatives of the Chinese Communist Party, willing to do the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party, and were directly financed by them? You know how fast we would be in Guantanamo Bay? You guys see when they tried to do the chairman of Mali from the Uhuru Socialist Movement got a donation from a Russian, and they tried to lock this motherfucker up for 20 years. You understand what the United States would do to us if we did a fraction of what the Maduro opposition did to him? Meanwhile, Zohran Mamdani and Bernie Sanders and the NATO left have the nerve to smear this very patient man as a tyrant. Some of you guys right now, man, if we ever gain power, these people are not going to be allowed to run. I don't give a. Our goal is to complete suppression of the capitalist class. I don't think this motherfucker should even be. The second that you start siding with hostile capitalist forces, done. But hey, look at this. This is the resistance. This is the Democrat Party. You guys know there's a bipartisan movement and resolution to officially honor Maria Corina Machado. Look, here's Senator Dick Durbin. He's a Democrat. I introduced a bipartisan resolution to honor Nobel Peace Prize recipient Maria Corina Machado. Miss Machado has fought for democracy. Jesus Christ. Come on, man. She is literally calling for a hostile overthrow of her country. And you guys realize that Nicolas Maduro defeats his opposition despite massive foreign interference in the election, which is what we describe. What liberals accused Russia of doing in 2016, let's say the worst accusation of Russiagate is true. The worst interpretation of Russiagate is nothing compared to what the opposition has done to Venezuela. Russiagate is fucking nonsense compared to what the opposition has done. Machado has fought for democracy. There is no fair election that can happen when you have sanctions, my friends. And you want to know what Maria Corina Machado and the opposition call for? They call for increased sanctions of their own people. That's my infamous got you question I ask all the Venezuelan opposition. Whenever these Venezuelan bots, they've been going after me, like I had a lot of bangers on X where I exposed these people. I've been going after Maria Machado, and these people are fucking furious. And whenever these neocon influencers go after me, I always ask them a simple question. I radioed so many of them. Why I was like, hey man, do you support the United States sanctions on your country? If you follow me on X, you see me ask this question to many people. And every single time, without fail, they always dodge the question. They always say, "How I wanted to answer shit to you, man. No, I don't. This is a gotcha question." They always evade it, and they always make my point because you can't come out and say that you support economically starving your own people, because when you do that, you immediately expose that you're a traitor of the highest order. And by the way, around 80%. 90% of the pro-regime change right-wing Venezuelans, the people I would say with quotation marks, the Venezuelans that I asked, the fake Venezuelans, 90% of them dodged the question. There were 3 people who answered my question, and every single one of them admitted that they support sanctions on their own country. Why would anyone take them seriously as an agent of? So we explain how sanctions is an act of election interference. So for you to call for sanctions on your country, you are essentially calling for the United States and hostile Western powers to directly influence your elections by rigging economic results and trying to turn the people away from their government. That's the stated objective. So that's the opposition admitting publicly that we need help in order to win. It is, as you guys are saying here, I see you guys have got great comments. It's 100% treason. Meanwhile, Maria Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, she goes on corporate media and she talks about how the United States should expand their sanctions. She doesn't even hide it. You guys realize there was a study. I had to fact check myself. There was a 2019 study that showed United States sanctions on Venezuela murdered at least 40,000 Venezuelans. They cut out access to medical supplies. They harmed the economy and they harmed the working class so much that 40,000 Venezuelans was murdered. Imagine seeing 40,000 Venezuelans die, and your result and what you call for after that is more sanctions on your people. You understand how evil that is? In 2021, sanctions caused more than 800,000 deaths. You guys realize that we sanction 1/3 of the world's population, right? I'm digging up some data. Look, the staggering death toll of Western sanctions. New research shows that United States and European sanctions have killed 38 million people since 1970. Meanwhile, you have dipshit right wingers like, oh my God, do you know how many victims there are of communism? Even if we took your fake bullshit number seriously, you realize the victims of capitalism completely destroys anything that you can, even the fakest number you can put together on the deaths of communism pales in comparison to what the capitalist structure has done. U.S. sanctions against Venezuela led to severe episodes of food insecurity. U.S. sanctions are killing Venezuela. I was trying to find a more up-to-date number. The number I read earlier was from 2019. I was kind of doing this live. This is what I just read to you guys. You guys see how there was a 2019 study that showed 40,000 deaths in Venezuela in 2 years. Bro, that's 2 years. 40,000 deaths in 2 years. So I was trying to find something that's more up to date. It's actually hard to find a lot of these numbers on the up to date numbers. Every source I see, they always look. Everyone quotes the 2017 number. I don't even see a lot of the updated numbers. But the point is, Venezuelan sanctions have been horrific for the working class. And the opposition and neocons lie, and they say, well, we're gonna have targeted sanctions against the Maduro regime. And I've been asking this question for over a decade now, even before I became a citizen journalist. What do you mean targeted sanctions? What are those? How can you say you're putting targeted sanctions on the regime, but you're targeting medicine? And you're targeting food? Never believe the hype when they say targeted sanctions are not real. So this is the pain and suffering that Maria Machado is calling for on her own people. Meanwhile, the Democrats want to honor her. And this is a bipartisan resolution where Democrats want to honor her. So one of the biggest mistakes, as I mentioned before, was the empire actually giving her too much attention, because I knew who she was for a very long time. I covered her for years. She has been a troublemaker and a clown. She has been a Fox. I knew who she was because you would see her on Fox News all the time. Once again, I did a segment on her around 3 months ago. It was during the summer where I played a segment where we roasted Maria Machado on Fox News. But outside of being on Fox News, like, she was largely unknown. And the reason why many people would assume the Venezuelan opposition is just is because they didn't know who the Venezuelan opposition was. So one of the worst things that the empire actually could do was to put a spotlight on this person. And as people started doing research into her, the global, as the CNN, MSNBC, they are pretending, even the Democratic opposition. If you've seen the segment from MSNBC and CNN, they are pretending that she's a fighter for democracy. But if you step outside of the global minority bubble, the rest of the global majority is looking to her. Now, I've seen RT, I've seen Indian state media, I've seen China, I've seen all these state medias that was like, hey man, have you guys seen the Nobel Peace Prize winner praise Benjamin Netanyahu and the genocide in Gaza? What is that about? Then there was all these Democrat normie accounts. People who are not connected to the empire, they're youthful idiots. They vote for Democrats. They are like the sweet summer children. They are the people who thought that the Venezuelan opposition was fighting for democracy. Then they saw Maria Machado dedicate her Nobel Peace Prize to Donald Trump. And then the Harry Sisson style Gen Z Democrat was like, hey man, what the fuck is that about? Wait, she's a Trumpy? Like all the liberals like, oh my God, she's a Trump supporter. So them giving her this Peace Prize was them actually overplaying their hand, man. Maybe they're that confident. Maybe they're that cocky. Maybe they have a reason to be. Maybe they don't have to be that subtle with their empire tactics anymore. I don't think they have to be. Maybe they don't have to be. But the best thing they could have done is to keep this crazy psychopath in the shadows. Because even the Norwegian Peace Council, I don't know how these decisions are made, but apparently the Norwegian Peace Council is like, bro, what the fuck? Like they seen her do interviews. They looked into her a little bit more. They was like, bro, why did she get this award again? Look, the Norwegian Peace Council will not celebrate Maria Corina Machado Nobel Peace Prize. So I know the Nobel Peace Prize, they have done a lot of things that harm their reputation. Like giving Barack Obama the Nobel Peace Prize, that was pretty bad. They gave a Nobel Peace Prize to this journalist like 2 years ago. A journalist who publicly came out and said that Julian Assange deserved to be in prison. So there was a journalist who was pro imprisoning Julian Assange. I don't remember her name. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name. But she won the Nobel Peace Prize. So I know that the Nobel Peace Prize with Henry Kissinger, I know there's been a lot of like bad Peace Prize winners. But for whatever reason, I really do believe that this one in particular, just because how batshit crazy she is, I believe that she's the one that delegitimized the Nobel Peace Prize, like to the point where even liberals are like, ew. Western institutions have no legitimacy anymore. And I think they far overstepped it. By the way, here's what the Venezuelan military think of Maria Machado. Here's at an election event. Like, notice how the military officer does not shake the hand of this traitor. Because the Venezuelan military, the same with the Venezuelan Supreme Court, supports Nicolas Maduro and they ratified the Constitution. So what the Westerners, what they want you to believe, they want you to believe. You guys see how the military refused to shake her hand? They want you to believe that the military is lying. They want you to believe that Nicolas Maduro is lying. They want you to believe the Supreme Court is lying. But they want you to believe that the election in Venezuela was rigged. Why? because the opposition party said so. You guys realize the evidence that the United States used is exit polling that comes from Maria Machado's party. Their party did an exit poll where they polled majority of their own constituents. And now the Western media uses that exit poll as if it's fact. That was a few days ago, the community notes. They on X, they tried to fact check me on this. And they said that I wish I could find it. I think they removed the community. We had the community note removed. That's how much we shit on them. Oh, I wish I had it saved. I'm looking for it now. But I had a tweet where I put on Century said that the Venezuelan Supreme Court ratified Maduro's election win. I posted all these receipts, pissing off the Empire bots. And then there was a community note that came on that was like, hey man, don't you know that the Carter Center, a bunch of U.S. NGOs said that Nicolas Maduro lost? Damn, I wish I could find it. I think they removed the community note. I think that's one of the reasons. I can't find it. But it's something that fact checkers in the West, the fact checkers in the West will use a fucking exit poll from the opposition party as evidence that the election was rigged. Despite the fact that the Venezuelan Supreme Court. So you guys are engaged in election denialism? Come on, man. Come on, man. And I saw this earlier before, and we're going to continue to follow this. I don't think this is a military agreement, but Russia and Venezuela are tightening their relationship up. And the global majority, I cannot emphasize this enough, the global majority is not buying the nonsense about Maduro being a narco-terrorist. That's why Latin America is rallying. Even the people who criticize. You had Lula, who went along with election denialism in Venezuela. Even Lula was like, hey, man, we got your back. And Lula stabbed Nicolas Maduro in the back last year. But now Lula is back on board. Even Brazil is like, hey, man, we don't support this. Gustavo Petro, another social democrat who stabbed Nicolas Maduro in the back. Even he come down and say, hey, man, we're going to ride or die on Nicolas Maduro on this. So not only you have that, you have the Latin American coalition, the largest countries coming out in support of Venezuela when it was isolated before. But now you have Putin that was like, hey, Maduro, I got your back, homie. You have China and Venezuela that's tightening their relationship. Like Russia and Venezuela has entered into a strategic partnership. It's very concerning to see that it's obvious that the battle lines have been drawn for World War III. Thank God for BRICS. Thank God the global majority finally shook off American brainwashing that did brainwash many of the global population after World War II. But that's over now, man. Like Iran, Russia, China, like North Korea has been increasing their relationship with Russia even more, with China even more. Like the global majority realize it's on, man. India is continuing to violate. Even India, who's the weak link out of the bunch, they're still buying Russian gas. They are increasing their relationship with China. I am curious. What is India's reaction to Venezuela? I'm actually very interested to hear that. I know they have a strong partnership. I was just looking for a headline. I'm curious to see, like, so they have a cooperation agreement. I found this. I was looking for myself. I was curious personally. India, Venezuela explore. Come on, stop. India, Venezuela explore cooperation in digital public. So they have a lot of stuff going on there, it seems. I was just trying to brush up on the Indian-Venezuelan relationship. But based on what I'm seeing, it does seem like the global majority is rallying behind the insanity that is MAGA and Trump. This is an older article. The answer to this question is no. Isn't that right, Zoya? Is India buckling under U.S. pressure on Russian oil purchases? India, as far as I know, they're still buying Russian oil. You had the Trump administration who increased their tariffs on India because they was upset because India refused to commit to buying, to ending their buying Russian oil. Last thing I want to share, I think I might end it with this. I'm going to show you guys the Marjorie Taylor Greene heel turn. This is why I would never. Here was Zoya saying India plays all sides. That's true. I think India is the weak link, but I'm glad they haven't cut off Russia for sure. India is definitely the weak link in BRICS, but they held strong thus far on the Russian oil aspect, and they're becoming closer to China. Moody is a piece of shit. I don't trust him, man. I really don't. I see a lot of people in geopolitics give them a lot of credit. I'm still extremely sus of India, man. I really do think that's I remember I had a segment where I explained why India is betraying BRICS, and I had a few comrades that reached out to me explain how explain how India is still holding the line. I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know. But here's the Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was a heel. Then she went she temporarily turned to a baby face. Then she went heel again. Like she turned heel more than the Big Show does. Like she's a fucking Undertaker based on how much she turned heel. Because remember, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she was the baby face for a while. I told you guys the United States politics is fake as fuck. And nothing but political theater. she was a tweener. I can see that. I can see her being a Stone Cold Steve Austin style tweener. Someone who's both a face and a heel. So when it came out to the shutdown and healthcare, you guys see how she was like, I believe we need to fund Obamacare. We need healthcare. Then she was speaking out against the Gaza genocide. And Zoya, do you remember this? Zoya, people was like, Nick, you will never give Marjorie Taylor Greene credit. Why can't you ever give Marjorie Taylor Greene credit? Because she spoke out against the Ukraine war. She spoke out against the war in Gaza. She called out Donald Trump for the Epstein list. So there was this period where she was given permission to turn babyface. I have as much respect for United States domestic politics as I do pro wrestling. That's why I use the terms a lot. Because that's exactly what it is. Marjorie Taylor Greene turned face when they need her to. They play good cop, bad cop all the time. And now when they need Marjorie Taylor Greene to turn heel, because they need a closed rank, here's Marjorie Taylor Greene turning heel, and exactly why I never gave her any credit. So in response to this crazy clip where Trump says he's going to kill people without any congressional oversight, Marjorie Taylor Greene says, I fully support President Trump and our military protecting the American people from illegal deadly drug trafficking. So you know that she don't believe that. So there are a lot of people that are like, man, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of the smarter people in Congress. She's one of the most good faith people in Congress. So if you believe that she's one of the best faith people in Congress, like a lot of people do, you have to know that she knows that Venezuela is not a narco state. That there's been, according to United States intelligence, Venezuela has nothing to do with the fentanyl crisis. So this is Marjorie Taylor Greene doing her job. Just like it's AOC's job to support regime change against Putin. The same way as Bernie Sanders' job to support the Ukraine war, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene's job to support war against China, war against Venezuela, and to be a cold warrior. Which is why I never gave Marjorie Taylor Greene credit, and we should never give these ruling class puppets who take turns being phased, baby heels, tweeners. It's political theater where it's nonstop good cop, bad cop bullshit. So I think we're 90 minutes in. Make sure you guys support us on Patreon. We are demonetized right now on my channel. So if you want to support my work, only like $3-5 if you're working class. Like if you're working class, I only need about $3 a month, $5 a month to support my work. I'm a working class journalist. The rest can go mutual aid, donate to other stuff. I only need a few bucks to keep the lights on if you support this work. Make sure you guys subscribe to my new YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. I am live on Rumble. Make sure you subscribe to Rumble. Make sure you subscribe to us on Kick. I know you guys subscribe to me on X, man. X be popping. So on Wednesday, I will have our friend Dr. Jill Stein. She will return to RBN to explain what she's been working on after the election. You guys know I fuck with Dr. Jill Stein. So she joined us. Shama Sawant will be joining us for our special. We have a special for the New York mayor's race. Me and Shama will be breaking down the results of that next week. So we have a lot of great shows coming up for you guys. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe. I appreciate you guys for watching. Have a good one.